hard to hear. It's hard to hear.
1, 2. 1, 2.
Margaret. I know, that's a good sound. Margaret, do you want to?
I'll say it.
Yes.
Just to welcome you. We're going to get started, everybody. So at the very end, we're going to put up the slide that has the happy hour. So at the very, there should be a slide that has the happy hour.
It's not in this.
I uploaded it. It's uploaded.
Is it not the second page of this?
No, it's a separate slide. I just uploaded. Sorry. Everybody hear me? All right, great. We're just about ready to begin. Welcome everybody to Food and Agriculture Day in the Pavilion of Sustainable Agriculture of the Americas. Hello, hello. We have, as part of our final presentation today of celebration of food and agriculture and our actions to beat climate change, we're going to be hearing from a minister of the Caribbean who IICA is very proud to have supported to come here, along with our friend Curt Delice from the Caribbean region of IICA, and of course our intrepid and never-tiring moderator, Danielle Nierenberg from Food Tank. We're so happy to have you. Let's give Danielle a round of applause. So we're trying to shine a light on some of the less noticed parts of the hemisphere and some of the things that don't always get talked about. And I think we have a good opportunity to do that today. I just wanted to announce after this session, we will be having a happy hour. And in that happy hour, we'll be continuing to discuss the issues we've heard about here with Dominica. And we'll be talking about resilience in the form of the vision for adapted crops and soils. That'll start at the end of this session. So please feel free to stay and have drinks and food. And without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Danielle. Thank you very much, Danielle.
Thank you so much, Margaret, and thank you to the IICA Pavilion. Happy Food and Ag Day, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm very honored to be sharing this stage with two incredible innovators, and I'm really excited to dive into this deeper discussion of the intersection of food, agriculture, and climate in the Caribbean. So we have Minister Roland Royer, the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries, Blue and Green Economy of Dominica. Please give him a round of applause. And we're joined by Curt Delice, the Caribbean Region Coordinator for IICA. Give him a round of applause. So, Minister Royer, I had a chance to talk to you this morning, but for those of the folks in the room who couldn't join, can you talk about what the climate crisis, the effect that it's having on Dominica?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. And happy Food and what day?
Food and Agriculture Day.
Agriculture Day. Great stuff. Yes, Dominica has been affected tremendously by climate change. Over the past 7 years, we have been visited with hurricanes and storm. In 2017, we were struck by Hurricane Maria, a Category 5 storm. It moved actually from Category 3 to Category 5 within 2 hours, and we lost 226% of our GDP. 2 years before that, we were struck by Tropical Storm Erica with 12 inches of rainfall, and we had to relocate an entire community, and we lost about 90% of our GDP. In 2013, before that, we were visited by Tropical Storm Ophelia, where we had a lot of rain, and we washed away bridges, and the event just kept going on and on and on, all fueled by climate change. And in the Caribbean, just this year, St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Vincent, Jamaica all suffered the Category 4 Hurricane Beryl, which caused a lot of damage as well. So the climate crisis is real in Dominica, but what's more hurtful for us, seeing that we are net zero, we have no, we are not contributing to climate change. We have no part in fueling these more frequent and stronger and virulent storms, and we are the one facing the brunt, of its attacks. And we are left alone to rebuild our
Right.
country. For example, after Hurricane Maria, my Prime Minister declared that Dominica would be the first climate resilient country in the world. And we got a lot of pledges from
Right.
international community. And we had to spend 90% of what we used to build back Dominica. So only 5% persons came up and committed to. So
Right.
95% of the resources had to be funded from Dominica's treasury.
Wow.
And that's very sad.
Yeah, that is very sad. Can you talk a little bit about how this constant attack from storms, the effect it has on farmers?
Yes, the effect is real. So farmers get out of production every other cycle because they are struck not only by hurricanes and storms, but we have prolonged dry periods. They can't really do the open field farming anymore. We have torrential rainfalls. So the climate variabilities, when you have erratic weather conditions, they're not too sure how to plant, when to plant, because we're used to a dry and a wet season. So that now is forcing farmers to invest now in infrastructure like shade houses, hydroponic system, greenhouses, and which is very expensive for them to do so.
Right.
And so we saw a mass migration from the farm because farmers are frustrated. They are losing the investment. And in turn, we saw a deeper dive in production and productivity, hence affecting our food security.
Right. I do feel like, though, Minister, that Dominica is such a huge example of resilience. You talked about the hydroponic farms that producers are investing in. You talked earlier to me today about youth. Can you talk a little bit more about that resilience of the people on the island?
Yes, and they are resilient because, we know we are known to feed ourselves, and we are the breadbasket of most of the Caribbean islands. We produce for them. So the food security is not only affected Dominica, but the rest of the region as well. And because of the introduction of the technology, we would need young farmers to participate, to adopt, this technology. And of course, government will do its part to really support them, to invest. Because I myself was a young farmer when Hurricane Maria struck, and it really discouraged me, to remain in farming. So if you don't have that resilient spirit and the support from central government, you'll give up. So the support to young farmers is essential to maintain food security. Definitely.
Thank you. Curt, I'm wondering if I can turn to you. Can you talk about how IICA is supporting Caribbean small island developing states like Dominica and helping them build that resilience that is so necessary to fight the climate crisis?
Okay, thank you very much, Danielle, and thank you for invitation to this event, letting IICA contribute. Okay, just elaborate a little on the point that you raised with the minister, and it is the issue of the increased frequency. And sometimes we tend to gloss over that aspect.
Sure.
More than the intensity, the increased intensity in the storms that we're seeing. That increased intensity and non-cyclical alternating of a prolonged drought and excessive rainfall is actually causing a series of microshocks, which is causing interruptions in the biological systems in which the producers themselves are inserted.
Right.
And the issue is we are not measuring these effects because we are unable to because of the frequency. We do not have the resources. We do not have the infrastructure and the facilities to do that. So the ecological characteristics of the areas that the farmers are producing the fruit in are changing. And the only response he knows in the moment is, probably I have to increase fertilizer, or I need more irrigation water, but without understanding that dynamics. That's a very important aspect that we need to bring to the fore. So one of the key aspects for us within the whole context of climate change is how do we build the capacity of the countries to in order they themselves could build the resilience and the resilience of the agricultural sector. And we say within the context and the discourse of climate change, how do we develop a more climate responsive agricultural sector. Some of the elements are straightforward. Okay, we introduced new technologies. Minister referenced the issue of protected structures, to try to protect you maybe from the unusual rainfall events or the prolonged droughts. But one of the critical factors in that is that it comes at a cost.
Right.
And many of these countries are already suffering from high debt burdens. And Minister referenced that pledges were made, but they had to actually finance 95% of the rebuilding from their effects. Now remember, that is repeated. So you're constantly rebuilding and destroying. And we speak about build back better, but build back better comes at a cost.
Right.
So whereas we are building capacity in terms of knowledge and skills in the different aspects of climate change, more sustainable production systems, we are trying to do these things. There is a cost factor that IICA itself is not equipped to manage.
Right.
So the issue of the climate finance and how do we support the countries, as Minister said, who are not creating the problem, is a critical aspect that, we help lobby, we help develop competitive proposals for the countries, but still a lot depends on these decisions that comes from the high up and the countries that are the ones who have the resources. That becomes a critical aspect of what we do. So introducing the farmers and building capacity and knowledge in terms of new technologies. We're applying a lot of digital technologies now to help with measuring, reporting, teaching the countries how to develop more competitive proposals to access finance. These are aspects that we do. What else? Well, basically all aspects. Now, another critical component that we are trying to do is really incorporate the youth in a new vision of agriculture, trying to incorporate more the aspects of a regenerative agriculture within that new model. So you marry indigenous technologies with regenerative methods, processes, technologies, just to try to create a new dynamic to respond to the changing agriculture system.
Right.
So we are engaged in all these aspects with the countries.
Yeah, I want to get back to a point, and thank you, Curt, for that. But I want to get back to a point that you both mentioned. Dominica is not contributing to the problem. You are a net zero country. It's rich nations and people who are making this barrage, this constant attack of storms and other extreme weather events happen in the Caribbean and other small island developing nations. What do you want to say to leaders at COP29 about the Loss and Damage Fund, Minister?
It's simple. I think in the Loss and Damage Fund, I think it's about 700 million now, right? We need a special envelope for food security. And because if you don't have it open and you have it for infrastructure and other causes, for health, etc., I think the aspect of compensating farmers, will be lost. Because farmers are never given priority.
Right.
And I don't know why. Which is sad. Because we feed the world.
Right.
So in that, they need to commit to the pledges and have a special envelope that speaks to food security. In addition, just to draw back a bit on the financing component, for example, we had to draw down loans from World Bank of $85 million after we were struck by Nierenberg just to compensate farmers, to give them grants to invest in their farm, and to support them to build back the resilient pens, and to support them to buy the greenhouses, and to support them to buy the agro-processing equipment that they would have lost during the storm, and we are left to pay that. Concessionary terms, 1.5%, 10 years grace, but taxpayers have to meet that cost at some point. So I'm saying we were not supposed to take that loan. So if there were proper structure within that loss and damage fund, and that have that envelope that focus on food security, we could have drawn down from that.
Right.
And that
you wouldn't need those loans.
We would need those loans, and that $85 million would have gone to some other sector, tourism or something, or even boost the agri sector itself further, than taking those loans.
Absolutely, Curt.
Thank you. I think that's a very interesting question because it is this mysterious dynamic. Whereas within the context of carbon emissions, you hear a lot of finger pointing towards the agricultural sector. Cattle rearing, amount of methane that is released, the cutting down of trees. And IICA participated in the food system summit that was held by the FAO.
Yeah.
And one of the underlying tenets of our participation was that agriculture should be seen as part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Right.
Now, here's what's mysterious about that dynamic. You see the finger pointing towards the agricultural sector, yet have been following the COP. The struggle there was to incorporate agriculture as a key component of the COP. So how does that make any sense? If you are saying that this is part of the problem, you would think that it would be a central part of the discussions and the decision making and the pledges, and it's not. And I think one of the issues we are raising that the COP in Brazil being Brazil being one of the key agricultural powerhouses in the world, is try to mold that COP into something more about agriculture than the others has been. So I think we need to address that issue, even within the countries, and I think somebody, if you look at from the Caribbean perspective, there is some blame on the countries themselves, whereby a lot of the issues dealing with climate change is handled by the ministries of the environment or sustainable development. And you'd be hard-pressed to see agriculture included in these discussions or even represented when they travel. That has to be corrected.
Absolutely.
If you look at when we had the emergency of COVID, of course, we don't know climate-related, but when the COVID struck and we had all the restrictive measures, what was the issue that people were struggling for? It was not luxury vehicles. It was food. You saw people fighting over each other for food.
Right.
And we are beginning to see effects from the climate crisis that's already impacting food production, causing migration. And you would see a recent election, for example, in the US, immigration was a central tenet. What will happen if we do not address these issues, as he's saying, the countries that create the problem are not the ones that are suffering the most? What do you think is going to happen to migration? And what are, so we're actually creating conflicts by not addressing the issue of food and agriculture as part of that discourse for climate change negotiations.
Sure, and that really needs to happen. I want to talk a little bit and give some positivity to this conversation. There's a lot of collaboration taking place in the Caribbean region, and you're working with other countries to build that resilience. Do you want to talk about that, Minister?
Yes. Thanks for the question. Actually, how we started is that in building resilience in Dominica, we formed a new agency by Act of Parliament, which we call CRED. That's Climate Resilience Execution Agency of Dominica. The lifespan was 5 years, so last year was the last year for that. So what they did, they were the front institution that would develop the policies for climate resilience. So we had around 2 or 3 policies that were developed for that, and they were the chief negotiators and resource mobilization agency to get resources for Dominica to be resilient.
Right.
That CRED was funded by the Canadian government and the UK government. So so that's where we started building that partnership. Of course, and having the policy documents and the roadmap to build resilience, we use that as a tool first to attract grants and loan, and to work with other agencies where we could marry these policy documents with other strategic documents from other agencies like IICA, FAO, and the others to build resilience. So it was not just picking up a plan from an agency and adopt. We had to make sure they were in sync and to meet our targets. Like, for example, one of the targets under the 20-point targets on one of this document was to ensure that if we were struck by a next hurricane, that at least we would not have more than 50% of loss by agriculture in that. So that means that we have to build resilience within that sector. Working with IICA, we are doing tremendous work in terms of promoting smart agriculture. IICA has been with Dominica for the past 40 years, which we celebrated this year, and they have always been good partners with the government of Dominica. And the smart agriculture component, we've been working with them on that. ICA supported us in doing grass barriers to ensure that our slopes are stabilized in event of torrential rainfalls, and all the new technology that they have been introducing, particularly working in the vulnerable groups, women and youth.
Great.
So that's one of our strategic partners. And of course the FAOs and the other international organizations that we've been working with.
Sure. Kurt, do you want to elaborate on ICA's role in creating resilience?
Yeah, I think because if you look at because of the magnitude of the whole climate change phenomena and the diversity of its impacts, it is no one agency or one country that could deal with it on its own. So the issue of partnerships is really critical in dealing with the issue of climate change. We at ICA, we have launched what is called a hemispheric partnership program. And what ICA is trying to do is to bring, and that's around food systems, which take into all the components, particularly the issues of building resilience and this. And it's really to try to harness the capabilities of different agencies, different countries, different approaches, and to see how we could tackle the issues that arise in a more, how we say it, harmonious manner. Also, we do not have a lot of resources to play for, so we want to avoid duplication of efforts and maximize the use of these scarce resources. So that is one of the reasons why we are fostering this hemispheric partnership. We have some of the major financial institutions, academia involved, countries are represented in that partnership. But there are also other critical components that calls for specific attention. We have launched the Water and Agriculture Initiative because of the critical aspect of water within that whole climate change dynamic. And we have also launched a Living Soils initiative with the University of, I hope you saw Dr. Ratan Lal was there. And we have launched that. We have also partnered with AGRA in Africa to launch a Living Soils for Africa, because the issue of soil health and its ability for carbon sequestration is critical. If we do not address the issue of soil degradation, there's no way we could really address the full extent of the carbon that needs to be removed from the atmosphere, or to reduce the emissions going forward. So that's some of the approaches that we are doing, trying to bring together and using ICA as that central intermediary to bring back broad-based support to address some of these critical issues, impacting the food systems, and of course, trying to mitigate climate change and adapt to the changing dynamic acoustic.
And really bringing everyone together, connecting those dots, focusing on soil health and all of the impacts that it can have. I want to end, again, on a positive note. What is your call to action, Minister, for the folks who are leaving COP29 this week and getting ready for COP30?
Yeah, I mean, as I said this morning, you need to commit to those pledges because we are in need.
Say it again.
We need to commit to those pledges because we are in need of the financing.
Yep.
And we're not just saying it must only be grants. We are open for concession rate loans, because we need to build the sector.
Sure.
Food security is an issue globally, in the Caribbean as well, and we need the support to ensure that food security is under control. And of course, to do that, we need involvement of the youth in agriculture. Young persons to invest, but they need to be encouraged by providing the resources so that they could not just invest, but remain in it as a business, because we have to make this sector attractive for the young persons.
Absolutely. Curt, call to action.
Yeah, well, basically that's it. We need seriousness and ready commitment to the action. While we talking back and forth about, the problem is getting worse and worse. So we need seriousness, we need timelines by which the key actions should be agreed to and put into place. If not, we'll end up in a much more serious crisis, jeopardizing the future generations.
And we cannot do that. Thank you, gentlemen. This has been a wonderful discussion. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you so much.